Hello everyone, whoever you're joining me, thank you for your time and welcome to today's learning session, Bava Kamma, Staff 73 Amud A. Just continuing from the last staff. There are those who say that Rava also holds like Abai, who says that by right a conspiring witness should be disqualified retroactively when he provides his testimony, and here this is Rava's reason for not disqualifying him retroactively. It is due to the potential monetary loss for purchasers whose acquisitions had been validated by these witnesses between the time of the witnesses' first testimony, when they rendered conspiring witnesses. If the disqualification of the witnesses were applied retroactively, as by right it should, all these transactions will be nullified, which will cause a loss to these purchasers. We'll ask, what is the practical difference between the two explanations of Rava's opinion? After according to both explanations, Rava did not apply the disqualification of conspiring witnesses retroactively. The Gemara explained that there is a difference in a case where two witnesses testify about one of the witnesses, that he was not at the scene of the supposed crime, and two other witnesses testify about the other one witness in a similar manner. So what does that mean? Terei lacha v'choru. Two about one, etc. In this case, there are a total of 4 witnesses who undermine the testimony of the first pair of witnesses, 2 for each witness, and the Gemara indicates that disqualification of the first pair of witnesses, one at a time, is not considered a novelty. Tosfot asked, there is a principle with regard to testimony that no greater credibility is granted to a larger set of witnesses than to a small set. If so, the fact that the united testimony of the first set of witnesses is deemed not credible due to the testimony of the other two sets is a novelty. They explain that this refers to a situation where the first 2 sets of witnesses described the event from different vantage points and were not even aware of each other's existence. In this case, they are not considered a single set of witnesses, but 2 separate witnesses whose testimonies happen to correspond in such a manner that they can join to form a single valid testimony. Since they are considered individual witnesses, it is reasonable to say that each one's testimony can be negated by 2 other witnesses. Alternatively, there is a practical difference between the two explanations in a case where 2 witnesses disqualify the first set of witnesses by testimony that they once committed robbery and are therefore unfit to give testimony. The Gemara elaborates, according to this version in which you say that Rava's rejection of retroactive disqualification was because it is a novelty. In these 2 circumstances there is no novelty, and therefore he would agree that disqualification should be retroactive. According to that version in which you say that Rava's concern was due to potential loss for purchasers, in these 2 circumstances there is a concern for potential loss for purchasers. Consequently, in these circumstances as well, Rava would reject retroactive disqualification. Rabbi Yirmiyah of Divti related, Rav Papa once took action, i.e. ruled in a case in accordance with the opinion of Rava, and rejected retroactive disqualification of conspiring witnesses. Rav Ashi said that Allah is in accordance with the opinion of Abaye. Conspiring witness is disqualified by Torah law from providing testimony in the future, even in a case in which he conspired involved a monetary issue and he pays the monetary penalty involved. The disqualification goes into effect from the time he provides his testimony in court, in accordance with the opinion of Abaye. And say for Shavt in Hilchot Eidos 10:4, Shulchan Aruch Mitzvah 34:8. With regard to retroactive disqualification of conspiring witnesses, the Gemara provides a principle. And in this dispute between Abaye and Rava, the halacha is according to the opinion of Rava, except for 6 cases in which the halacha is according to the opinion of Abaye. They are, in the cases represented by the Menomic Yod Ein Lamed Kof Gimel Mem, these halachot are the following: unknown despair Yush, conspiring witnesses Eidim, who would disqualify retroactively a side person Lehi, standing alone, betrayed the Kedushin, that is not given to consummation, revealing intent with a bill of divorce, a get, and an apostate, a mumma, who sins rebelliously. The Gemara asks a question with regard to Abaye's opinion, from which we learn in the Mishnah. If one stole an ox or sheep, as established based on the testimony of 2 witnesses, and he stole the animal or sold it, also based on the testimony of 2 witnesses, also based on the testimony of the same witnesses, and these witnesses were found to be conspiring witnesses, these conspiring witnesses pay everything, including the 4-fold of 5-fold payment. The Gemara explains the question. What is it not referring to a case in which the events occurred in the following sequence? The witnesses testified concerning the theft of the animal, and then testified concerning the animal slaughter. And scholars accordingly they were rendered conspiring witnesses for the testimony concerning the theft, and then they were rendered conspiring witnesses for the testimony concerning the slaughter. And if it enters your mind to say, in accordance with the opinion of Abaye, that a conspiring witness is disqualified retroactively from the time he provided his testimony, then with regard to these witnesses, once they render conspiring witnesses concerning the theft, the matter becomes clarified retroactively that when they testified concerning the slaughter, they were disqualified to serve as witnesses. Consequently, that testimony should be rejected. Why then must they pay the fourfold or fivefold payment for their testimony concerning the animal slaughter? The sages say in response to what are we dealing here? We are dealing with a case where the events did not happen in the sequence. Rather, the witnesses first rendered conspiring witnesses with regard to testimony concerning the animal slaughter, and only afterward were they rendered conspiring witnesses with regard to the theft. The sages say in rejection of this answer, ultimately when they are subsequently rendered conspiring witnesses with regard to their testimony concerning the theft, the matter becomes clarified retroactively when they testified concerning the slaughter, they are disqualified from providing testimony. Why then must they pay the fourfold or fivefold payment for the testimony concerning the animal slaughter? The Gemara gives its final answer. And halacha in accordance with the opinion of Abaye, since the mission can be explained as discussing a case where the witnesses testified concerning the theft of the animal and slaughtered at the same time, and afterward they were rendered conspiring witnesses with regard to testimony of both matters. Therefore, even as disqualification of these witnesses is established retroactively, they were not disqualified when they provided that single testimony concerning the theft and the slaughter. The Gemara proposes, let us say that the dispute between Abaye and Rava is parallel to the dispute between the Tanaim. As is taught in Abaye, in a case where there were two witnesses testifying against someone, claiming that he stole an animal, and they subsequently testified against him that he slaughtered the animal, and they were rendered conspiring witnesses. Only with regard to the testimony concerning the theft, the halacha is in accordance with the principle that testimony that was partly invalidated is entirely invalidated. In other words, the testimony concerning the slaughter of the animal is null and void, as there is no longer any testimony that the animal was ever stolen. Therefore, the witnesses pay the double payment for having attempted to cause the theft to pay that amount, while the accused is entirely exempt. But if they were rendered conspiring witnesses in regard to the testimony concerning the slaughter, testimony about the theft remains valid. Consequently, the thief pays the double payment, and the witnesses pay a twofold or threefold payment for having attempted to cause the thief to pay this amount, which is the fine for slaughter or sale beyond his double payment. The Brisa continues. Rabbi Yossi says, in what cases the statement said? It is said when the theft and the slaughter were established by two separate testimonies, but these matters were established by one single testimony, then even if they were rendered conspiring witnesses with regard to the testimony concerning the slaughter, in accordance with the principle that the testimony that was partly invalidated entirely invalidated. Let's see that in the footnote. If witnesses were disqualified with regard to part of their testimony, some sages maintain that this invalidates all the testimony they presented, as they have been proven to lack the integrity required for giving testimony. Others hold that it invalidates the rest of the testimony only if it was given commentally as indicated in the Gemara, in which case all the testimony is considered a single testimony. Some authorities distinguish between conspiring witnesses who are entirely disqualified and contradictory witnesses who are not necessarily disqualified but whose testimony cannot be accepted on this matter. The testimony of these witnesses with regard to other matters remain valid. When the testimony concerning the slaughter is invalidated, the testimony concerning the theft is likewise negated, and the alleged theft is not required to pay the double payment. This concludes the Brisa. The Gemara analyzes Rabbi Yossi's statement. What did Rabbi Yossi mean when he said by two separate testimonies, and what did he mean when he said by one single testimony? If we say the phrase by two separate testimonies literally means by two separate testimonies, i.e. by two separate sets of witnesses, one which testifies concerning the theft, while the other testifies concerning the slaughter, this would mean that the expression by one single testimony means that by one set of witnesses that testifies to both the theft and the slaughter, one matter after the other. And if so, when Rabbi Yossi then says that the facts are established by one testimony, he meant one set of witnesses testifying about both matters, one matter after the other, i.e. that they testify concerning the theft and then testify concerning the slaughter. Therefore, they render conspiring witnesses only with regard to the slaughter. Halacha is determined in accordance with the principle that the testimony that was partially invalidated is entirely invalidated. And consequently, Rabbi Yossi would maintain that they are considered to have been rendered conspiring witnesses concerning the theft as well. The Gemara asks, from where would this be derived? Why should the earlier testimony about the theft be negated by their status as conspiring witnesses from the latter testimony concerning the slaughter? Rather, is it not the case that when Rabbi Yossi said, by two testimonies, he meant by a single testimony that is similar to two testimonies, and what is that? It is one set of witnesses who testify about both the theft and the slaughter, one matter after the other, at two separate times. And if these matters were established by one single testimony, when the witnesses testified about both matters at the same time, Rabbi Yossi concedes that these are not two separate testimonies, despite the fact they refer to two different events. We will continue to analyze the dispute between Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis. The Amoraim discuss this matter assumed that according to everyone, i.e. both Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis, if a witness pauses briefly in his testimony and then continues to testify, he considers one last testimony, one long testimony. This is in accordance with the principle that the legal status of a pause or retraction within the time required for speaking of short phrase is like that of continuous speech. The legal status of a pause or retraction within the time required for speaking a short phrase is like that of continuous speech. If one issues a statement and within the time it takes to say, "Peace be upon you, my rabbi," he retracts or changes an aspect of his declaration, the second statement overrides the first. There are certain exceptions to this principle: blasphemy, verbal acceptance of a false deity, betrothal of a woman, and divorce of one's wife. In all these cases, there is no possibility of retraction after the original statement, even within the aforementioned time frame. That's in the Rambam Sefer Aflah, Hilchot Shavuot 2:18, and Sefer Shovot Mehilchot Eidat 23, Shulchan Aruch Yodei 234, 31-33, 340, 24, Chotzer Mishpat 29:1, 281:7. A pause that is not considered to be an interruption in a continuous speech is defined as one that is no longer than the time it takes to say, "Peace be upon you, my rabbi." The Ramban states, citing Rabbeinu Tam, that the sages instituted this halacha, so if one encounters his teacher when he wishes to retract the statement he just made, he can greet him first and subsequently issue his retraction. The Ran does not accept this explanation as it indicates that this halacha is by rabbinic law, as in various cases e.g. vouchers time applies even with regard to matters of Torah law. He therefore explains that a person generally intends to allow himself to change his mind within a short period after speaking. Therefore, the two testimonies, one concerning the theft and one concerning the slaughter, are considered a single testimony. The Gemara asks with regard to the above, what is it not with regard to this that Rabbi Yossi and the rabbis disagree, as the rabbis maintain like Rava that a conspiring witness is disqualified from here on, i.e. from when he is rendered a conspiring witness, and since it was only from that time when the other witnesses testify about them, that they are rendered conspiring witnesses, it is only with regard to their testimony concerning the animal slaughter that they are rendered conspiring witnesses, whereas concerning the theft itself, they are not rendered conspiring witnesses. And Rabbi Yossi holds like Abai, like that a conspiring witness is disqualified retroactively from when he provided his testimony. And consequently, since they are disqualified immediately when they testify, if they are rendered conspiring witnesses concerning the slaughter, they are rendered conspiring witnesses concerning the theft as well. As you point out, the Gemara does not mean that they have the actual status of conspiring witnesses concerning the theft. Rather, the Gemara means that their testimony about the theft is invalid because it's considered a single testimony together with the testimony concerning the slaughter. As the legal status of a pause or retraction within the time required for speaking a short phrase is like that of continuous speech, either two testimonies are considered one unit. The sages say in rejection of this opinion, if it were accepted that the legal status of a pause or retraction within the time required for speaking a short phrase is like that of continuous speech, everyone would agree that the witnesses are disqualified retroactively, and the testimony with regard to the theft will also be negated, but here they disagree about that very issue, i.e. whether the legal status of a pause or retraction within the time required for speaking in short phrase is like that of continuous speech. The rabbis maintain that if a pause is within the time required for speaking in short phrase, then the two aspects of the testimony provided by the witnesses are not like one testimony of continuous speech, but are considered separate testimonies, and therefore the testimony concerning theft remains valid. Thank you for listening, and I wish you a very good day. All the best. Bye.